Engineering and EOR at Petrolern. We are still experiencing a very difficult time with both COVID-19 and low oil prices. We at Petrolern are very blessed to be able to fill a part of your time during this tough situation. Our main goal for this seminar series is to keep you learning and motivated, especially we are planning many talks on geothermal and carbon subsurface storage application to show oil and gas people that there are many opportunities out there for them. I would like to thank all the experts who accepted to give a talk here. We are now working on the schedule for June. If in case you are interested to give a talk, please contact me or email us at info@petrolern.com. Our plan is to have 2 talks per week. So if you have signed up once, you will receive invitations for all the talks. So no need to sign up for each talk individually. Our next seminar is on Friday, May 8th, a very interesting talk by Dr. Samin Razi Perchikulai from Battle. And the title is Simplified Statistical-Based Model to Estimate CO2 Injection and Geomechanical Responses. At this point, I would like to ask everyone to mute the microphone and turn off cameras. If you have any question, please type them in the public chat section. Just make sure you send them to everyone. If for any technical and non-technical reason, you couldn't stay with us all the way, so don't worry, we will record every session and we will post them on our website. So, Dr. Tariq is the Director of Reservoir Engineering and EOR at Petrolern. He retired from Exxon Mobil in 2016 after 40 years of service in upstream oil and gas. During this time, he managed the largest gas field and oil fields in the world in support of mega LNG projects. He has practical experiences and knowledge of current industry practices for assessment and development of unconventional resources through his involvement in various projects in the United States, Eagle Ford, Barnett and Bakken, for example. His current interest includes reservoir flow processes, evaluation of unconventional resources, reservoir management, and surveillance. He has taught ExxonMobil in-house courses on unconventional resources. Dr. Tariq is a senior member of the SPE and has been an active participant in its activities since 1973. He served as the SPE Distinguished Lecturer in 1987 and the director of the SPE's Qatar section from 2003 to 2006. He has contributed to the oil field technology with over 50 technical papers and US patents. He earned an Advanced Professional Skills Award from ExxonMobil in November 2015 for his services to advance the engineering profession in ExxonMobil. He earned a Ph.D. in Petroleum Engineering from Stanford in 1977. With that, I would like to turn it to Dr. Tariq to start the presentation.
Thank you, Saleh. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I understand people are everywhere in all time zones. So today's topic is EOR for unconventional resources, current ideas, understanding of physical phenomena, and realistic future prospects. So as Saleh said, I worked for Exxon Mobil since 1977. So, and I have worked in Exxon Mobil EOR technology on and off. So I have kind of been there for EOR throughout this, its evolution. And so mostly what I'm talking, my point of view is from Exxon Mobil technology point of view. And Exxon Mobil operates, is one of the most active company in enhanced oil recovery, has been. And in fact, today it operates about 500 projects all over the world, either operates or is partner in. So about half of all EOR projects are operated by Exxon Mobil. So I need, I got to learn different things, and I would like to present my perspective and some of the ideas I have. And so let's start. So the first thing is what I will talk about it, I will start with the definition of EOR because I understand people maybe from different walks and different perspective. So before we go deeper into the unconventional EOR, we need to understand what EOR meant for companies since 1970. In fact, EOR started in 1950s. So it's the technology and the techniques are not new. They have been there for a long, long time. It has a history, and we'll go through it. So in this talk, I'll go quickly through definition. Why do we need EOR? I am sure for some of you, this may be, very basic and, probably more than that, but, I just want to include it here. So to make it a complete talk. What is the differences between conventional and unconventional EOR? We will cover unconventional EOR current status, and then what are the recovery mechanisms, and what is required for future success other than high oil prices. So, and then finally conclusion and some questions. So let's move on. First, a very basic definition of EOR is any process in which we inject non-native fluids or non-native energy deep into the reservoir. So the two things is non-native and deep into the reservoir. And this includes non-hydrocarbon gases, enriched gases, chemicals, heat, bacteria, all kind of things. And EOR is applied normally in a conventional sense. It's applied after we have done primary depletion, after we have done even secondary processes like water flooding or gas injection. And it requires that basic reservoir management, surveillance, and opportunity generation is continuously done in the field to optimize its value. Another definition that is a broader definition is improved oil recovery, which includes EOR as well as some other processes such as artificial lift, gas cycling, infill drilling, smart wells, long horizontal wells with multi-stage frac and all that. So EOR is a subset of IOR. So in unconventional, actually, most of the time when we talk about EOR, we are not talking about, in a strict sense, enhanced oil recovery. We are talking about improved oil recovery. And there are some other terms you will see in the literature: MEOR, microbial, chemical EOR, enzyme EOR, extreme OR, where we use very extreme solvent, improved light oil recovery, etc. So we will cover in this talk what is different for unconventional reservoir. So let's just briefly look at what has happened in EOR in last 60, 70 years. So the studies and pilots date back to 1950s and 1960s. So when we started producing some of our fields in starting 1930s and 40s, operators realized that we hardly get a fraction of what is in place for these reservoirs. And I'm talking about conventional reservoirs now. So immediately the big companies, they started studies and pilots dates back to 50s and 60s. The big impetus came during OPEC oil embargo in 1970. In 1970, there was an oil crisis, and there was an oil embargo on US, and US reacted by giving the companies tax credit. If anything can come from EOR project, it used to get a tax credit. So that was the time when EOR really flourished. Late 70s and early 80s were the time when most of the major oil companies, they hired PhDs and from graduate schools in US and all over the world to work on enhanced oil recovery, especially. Then in late 80s, oil prices dropped, and it shut down all the EOR research almost all of EOR research, except some in big companies like Exxon Mobil, continued, but it actually stopped, and because of the oil price drop. And it's a very similar situation to where we are today. In fact, so much so that in 1993, we used to jokingly call EOR as end of the road. So anybody who works in EOR, has probably no career. So limited industry interest continues till, in EOR by big companies. There was large resource base, to exploit. So continue to draw some level of support for EOR methods. And in early during 2000, because of national oil company interest and field declines, and the international oil companies started an EOR effort again, and then it also became quite a hot topic. And historically, US and Canada were the center of EOR, but later it was applied worldwide in 2000. And now we see something, again, coming up in 2013 to 2015 with the shale revolution. We are now started talking about unconventional EOR. So this is a brief history of EOR as I see it. I worked in this field from 1977 till 2016. Not all the time, but on and off. So what limits oil recoveries? This is a very fundamental, and I know you all probably, some of you know more, just much more than that. So in a simple terms, injected fluids only sweep part of a reservoir. So that's, that limits the oil recovery. And if this is the case, then what we do is we inject viscous fluids to make this front more even. Then the second reason is in swept zones, oil is trapped as isolated droplets, shown here. So in this case, if this is the case, then we inject something to lower interfacial tension. Miscible, non-miscible gas, chemical flooding, etc., surfactant, alkaline. And in some cases, oil is just too viscous to flow at economic rates. So in this case, our basic strategy is to reduce oil viscosity, and that's done by basically thermal processes or solvents. So what limits oil recovery is, again, following up to the last slide, are two things. One is sweep efficiency, and the other is displacement efficiency. So in sweep efficiency is the vertical sweep efficiency, aerial sweep efficiency, and this is the definition of displacement efficiency. How much oil are we able to displace from the pores? So these things are affected by vertical sweep efficiency is affected by these parameters, aerial by these parameters, and displacement efficiency by this pore structure. So of these parameters, there are some that we can target, and there are some that is given to us. So what can we change in this equation? So things that we can change in this equation is this. We can change the placement of well perforations. We can change fluid densities if we inject anything with the higher density. To improve aerial efficiency, we can change well spacing. We can change mobility ratio. And to improve displacement efficiency, we can change interfacial tension and wettability. So these are the targets of interfacial tension and wettability and fluid densities, mobility ratio. This is the target of conventional EOR. Now this slide just shows that how much oil remains to be recovered, and this is a slide from US Department of Energy some years back. So they estimated that about 5 trillion barrels are unrecoverable worldwide, global. We have produced so far 1.3 trillion, only 17%. What remains to be produced is 0.9 trillion, 12%, and the rest is unrecoverable using existing technology and economics. So in EOR, we are continuously have been working in conventional EOR. We have been working to do some changes to existing technology to make this pie a little smaller. So this slide just shows how important it is if we can get it. And then as I have underlined, economics is very important, because EOR always, it's quite an extensive process. It requires upfront investment and commitment from the companies. So the economics has to look good. Now, just a brief definition of when we say unconventional reservoirs, what do we mean by unconventional reservoirs? So unconventional resources are those that cannot be produced at economic rates or in economic volumes unless the well is stimulated by hydraulic fracture treatment, a horizontal wellbore, and or some other technique to expose more of the reservoir in the wellbore. The natural energy in the reservoir and drive mechanisms are not enough to push the fluid to the wellbore. Reservoir basically have very low permeability in nanodarcies and have very small pore throats. And various types of unconventional resources are shale gas, tight liquid, shale oil, tight gas, coal bed methane, etc. So when we talk about EOR in unconventional, we are basically talking about shale oil and tight oil. The oil that occurs in very tight situation, and it's liquid. So this is fundamentally, a 101 definition. And just to show that, these are the conventional pore. The sizes you can see 200 micrometer. And once you go to, some shale gas or tight oil like in Bakken or in Barnett, the pore sizes are very small, and they actually go into the nanometers, 500 nanometers. So in shale plays, we have also different type of pores. We have intergranular pores, we have organic pores, and we have intercalary porosity also. So it's a completely different situation than what we find in conventional pores. So fundamentally, the EOR processes have to be different in in a situation where the pores are so small, porosity is so small, and porosity is small, and also the pore sizes are very small, 10 nanometers to 100 nanometers. So now I have, from a practical point of view, what is different between conventional and unconventional resources? So what is the difference is in conventional reservoirs, we are able to get primary recovery of on the average between 15 to 35%. On the other hand, in unconventional resources, our primary recovery so far has been very small, 2 to 7% only of in place. So that's that's why this number is what's driving the shale EOR. How can we improve this this recovery number? The other differences are that in a conventional reservoir, the production and injection can be sustained for long periods of time. So we find a very good sandstone, we put a well there, and if if the reservoir energy is there, it can continue to flow for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And similarly, if we want to inject something in unconventional, we can inject and sustain it because of high permeability and good porosity. In unconventional, we are unable to sustain production or injection. There is a rapid decline in production, and also there is a very limited quantity of any fluid that you can inject in it. On a practical point of view, for conventional reservoirs, you need few wells for commerciality. You know, in some fields, you just, you know, put 5, 10 wells, and you are okay. You can, you know, produce oil commerciality. In unconventional situation, you normally need a very large number of wells. You know, 20 plus wells for any kind of commerciality. In unconventional reservoir, we assess projects before development drilling. So we discover a field, then we have some step out wells, we assess it, and then we start development drilling, you know, the pattern drilling and all that. However, in unconventional reservoirs, we assess projects by drilling. So we are assessing project as we go. You know, we don't assess it and then develop it. This is a very fundamental, from a practical point of view, a very fundamental difference. So there's more uncertainty in unconventional reservoirs. Yeah, so there's low to medium uncertainty here. There's always, you will find high certainty. High certainty in a sense that it's difficult to produce. We don't know how much we will be able to produce. We know that in a static sense, the reserves are there, but how we will produce, how much we'll produce, there's a high uncertainty. Conventional reservoirs, we normally go with vertical wells or horizontal wells, plus hydraulic fracturing is optional. In some cases it's needed, in some cases we do without it. In unconventional, as we know, we always have horizontal wells, long horizontal wells, and we always have to have hydraulic fracture, and in fact multi-stage fractures, which improve the contact area with the reservoir. So here again, for, you know, we need in conventional, normally we may need 40 to 60 wells for 2 BCFD if we are producing gas, unconventional natural gas. In unconventional, you may need a large number of wells for the same. So you need large number of wells for unconventional development. So basically we can say conventional reservoirs are hard to find, but easy to produce. So we have a large exploration effort, and then when we discover something, you know, normally then we just have to put wells there and produce. Unconventional reservoirs, on the other hand, we can say that they are easy to find. You know, once we know that a shale is there, these shales are actually kind of blanket shales, and they go long distances, and they are continuous, but they are hard to produce. So to produce, you know, we need to find in those shales sweet spots and then target them, and, you know, customize our completion strategy based on that. So basically, you know, there is a fundamental difference between a conventional and unconventional. In conventional reservoirs, we discover and then we deplete. So this is a discovery and this depletion process. The unconventional is basically a manufacturing process. Manufacturing means we continue to produce as we have to continuously drill and frack in order to sustain production. Now let's see what's the differences between conventional EOR and unconventional EOR. So I have given you a definition of conventional EOR. Difference in fact, you know, it's difficult to call any process in unconventional and EOR in a conventional sense, It's actually an IOR process, improved oil recovery. So when we have a conventional EOR, we are talking about long-term increase in ultimate recovery. So we are targeting ultimate recovery. In unconventional IOR, basically we want to sustain short-term production. So because in unconventional wells, production declines very fast, and then to sustain it, you have to do something. And so here we are in unconventional EOR, conventional EOR, we are enhancing recovery. Here we are accelerating production. And then there are many other differences. We can sustain injection of external fluids in unconventional. Here we are unable to sustain injection. We can inject gas or some other things for a certain period of time during soaking period, but we cannot continuously inject it. The fluid flow mechanism are very well defined. It's Darcy's flow basically, but there is actually complex fluid flow through natural fractures, nanopores, through desorption from the organic pore surfaces of hydrocarbons. So it's so we basically don't understand we understand physical and chemical mechanisms very well, relatively very well understood in conventional EOR, but mechanism at this point are largely unknown. We really don't know what happens in unconventional rocks when we flow them. We have some ideas, but still work needs to be done. So in conventional EOR, we are basically targeting lowering interfacial tension, wettability and miscibility are key parameters. But effect of these parameters in unconventional remains unknown. In fact, there is a lot of evidence that miscibility has nothing to do with how much you will recover from an unconventional reservoir. I'll come to that later on. Conventional EOR, we are targeting reservoir volume. So we are targeting our fluids to go in the reservoir region, but in unconventional, we are only targeting wellbore and near wellbore region, fractured area. What we call a stimulated reservoir volume is the target. We need, we can have multiple production and injection wells in a conventional EOR, but in unconventional IOR, we normally have to just target a single well. So we inject something, we leave it there, we let it do something, and then we produce it back. EOR application in conventional reservoirs is applied mid to late life cycle after primary recovery and after secondary recovery. But here in unconventional IOR, we have to apply it from the beginning. And again, this is low to medium uncertainty and this is high uncertainty. So these are some fundamental differences when we talk about IOR and EOR. We need to keep this in mind. I interacted a lot of people when I was working in unconventional EOR, and I got this sense that people who start working after 2000 and 2000, they really have no idea where conventional EOR is coming from and what are the differences. So now we just talk about what's happening in unconventional EOR at this point. What is the current status? So the current status is, so due to rapid production decline of unconventional wells and low EOR, we only recover 2 to 7%. Techniques to improve and sustain productions are needed. All operators with any acreage are looking at IOR. So there are two ways an unconventional operator can sustain production. One is to go in the existing wellbores and do something, some IOR or EOR to improve, to sustain their production, or get and complete. So there is always a tussle between these two aspects. So they are competing with each other. Operators are always looking, should we go and do this, or should we do and get new acreage and new drilling and completions to maintain production. Only viable. So there is a large number of things that have been presented in the literature. If you look at SPE literature in last 5 to 7 years, this has been the most prolific topic as far as SPE papers are concerned. Unconventional EOR, shale EOR, unconventional in general and shale EOR in particular. But it appears that only viable unconventional EOR techniques so far are gas injection, either CO2 or rich natural gas, surfactants, and microbial. So they are viable. They are viable. We can do something with them. However, of these, only gas injection, CO2 and rich natural gas, appears to have commercial success. So on a routine basis in some field, and that also only in huff and puff mode. So huff and puff mode is when we inject something, we soak there, we hope that it covers all the SRV, the stimulated reservoir volume, and make some changes in there, and then we produce back and we improve the production. So during the last few years, numerous studies have been conducted at various types of EOR in unconventional reservoir, and large volume of material is available. Most of these studies have been lab work on core samples and numerical simulation. So in fact, here I am outlining what type of, so I have gone through all the literature. So whatever comes out, I look at it, and then, so this is a figure from one of the SPE papers. So this compiled all the studies, and so it appears that most of the studies in unconventional EOR have targeted in Bakken, 59%, then Eagleford, Wolfcamp, Permian Basin. Although it's a very large resource base, there isn't that much effort, and then there are some other. The important thing is that most of the studies are either experimental or simulation. In fact, almost half of the work is just simulation, and very few field pilots. So, in the experimental studies, we take small core plugs, get from outcrops. We use synthetic oil, and then we see how what is the improvement in recovery, and always because of large contact area, we are able to do experimental studies show more recovery than you can actually attain in a field situation. So then in simulation studies, there are problems themselves, and the big problem is how to model the fracture network, in a true sense, and also how to model the physical mechanism that occurs, the flow mechanism that occurs in the rock. Means there are some approximations, but they are just approximations, and so simulation results can also be quite off. In fact, one has to go to, if you truly want to simulate unconventional rock, you have to go to molecular diffusion processes to simulate it, because some of the molecules, some of the nanopores are at the same scale at the as the molecules that we are trying to displace. So the simulation has its own problem. So field pilot is, that's the gold standard of any EOR project. Companies are not willing to invest unless you have successful pilots, and not one, but a series of pilots that you are able to show that the process that we are targeting actually works. So that's the situation currently. This slide is I put together about 6 months. So maybe there's some more work now, but I doubt it because of the price shock. Now people will be more hesitant to do anything. So big projects, the current projects that are ongoing are EERC studies in Bakken. So this is Environmental and Energy Research Center in North Dakota, and they have done quite a bit of study in Bakken in EOR for unconventional. So they did phase 1, which they did core samples, well logs, fluid PVT, and they were able to attain 90% recovery from CO2 injection in a core samples. But then they went to field pilots, and they were operated by XTO, which is an Exxon Mobil subsidiary. And in fact, no incremental recovery was observed. So then they went again and did 7 pilots in water and gas injection. And again, in general, no incremental recovery was observed. So the bottom line is, the core, the experimental core work, although it's a good piece of information, it's not enough to really finalize any EOR project. Then the most famous EOR project in unconventional reservoirs is what is done by EOG in Eagle Ford. EOG is a company in Houston, and they have done quite a bit of projects in Eagle Ford, and they claim to have success. And there are some indications that they did have a success. And they're using huff and puff with hydrocarbon gas. So initially they started with CO2. They did some work in CO2, but then they realized that hydrocarbon gas is a better injectant for recovery. So they conducted 15 pilots in 2016, 32 pilots in 2017, and 100 applications in 2018. So the thing is, they have not released any actual data. They have just said, they have been very successful, but without releasing any data that researchers can really use. So some people used indirect and imprecise public data like Texas Roll Rate Commission data, compressor usage. They use drones to see over their fields what's happening. So, not truly a research work. But there are indications that EOG has been successful in Eagle Ford, and I'll show a slide on that. So, and then there is BHP has been doing some pilots in Permian Basin. One is gas injection and one chemical blend injection. So these are the current projects. And so this is a slide from SPE JPT, I think few months back. And they listed the shale producers which are using gas injection to improve their recovery. So as you can see, most of EOG in Eagle Ford, and this is in development mode. So this is the only project, EOR project in unconventional shale, that is actually being done as a development. All others you will see are either in pilot state or in transition. And you can see the target is mostly Eagle Ford, Eagle Ford, Eagle Ford. So after success by EOG, operators have gone to, other operators in Eagleford Shale has gone and applied it. So there are some work in Permian Basin. Occidental is doing CO2 pilot. So it turns out that CO2 doesn't work very well in Eagleford, but it works well in other places like Bakken and maybe in Permian Basin. So there are some other projects in Bakken. And so this is a series of current projects. Most of them are in pilot. Some are in transition. The only development, the only commercially successful EOR project is in Eagleford. So this slide shows Eagleford Reservoir, and it's an unconventional shale and hybrid. So there are some other stuff there also, conventional. So some of it is oil. So depending on the depth is oil. Then there is wet gas and condensate, and then there is gas. So these are the locations where EOG has done successful recovery by using half and puff analysis. But there are still few, and in fact there are thousands of candidates in Eagleford where, if this technique is established, it can be used. So hopefully in future, there, this whole area, this is a large area, by the way. It's not, it's many hundreds of miles. So you can see that there are a lot of locations where these techniques can work well. Hopefully in future. So as we said, there are only few field pilots, and success has been by EOG, and they have not published their techniques. So other operators are just trying to do trial and error. So a basic unconventional EOR technique looks like this. You have an unconventional well, and within 2 years the production declines by 90%. And so then you adopt, you implement some half and puff method. So you have a period where you inject natural gas and let it soak there. And then once you restart, produce back, you produce the well at a much higher rate. And then it declines again. Then you again go to the second cycle, a few weeks of injecting gas and then soaking it, and then again. And this is a diminishing return. So which each cycle, you get less and less recovery. So this is the basic implementation of an unconventional EOR in Eagleford. This is the basic experience. So now why this happens is not very clear. There's a whole list of mechanisms that I've gone through all the SPE papers, and there's a whole list of mechanisms that people put forward that this is happening, this is happening, but really there is no definitive answer. So because of success in Eagleford, there's a whole lot of a cottage industry of unconventional EOR consultants and service companies. They are selling ideas, all kind of ideas, and some of them work, some of them don't, but they all call themselves unconventional EOR. There have been data-driven approaches are being promoted. So far, in my opinion, impact is uncertain. CO2 EOR, we found excellent results in lab, but very disappointing in field, in Eagleford, but maybe in somewhere else, it can work. And researchers are not able to get their hold on the data. by companies which are successful, like from Eagleford. So there is a new paradigm for evaluation of unconventional EOR is needed. So if you compare this situation with what I described in the beginning in conventional EOR, you can see that we do need a new paradigm. So, I've listed all kind of recovery mechanism here. It will take a long time to go through all of them. Whereas the recovery mechanism in conventional reservoir is very well defined. Lowering of IFT, miscibility, front control, sweep efficiency. The expected mechanism in unconventional is is everywhere. It's molecular diffusion in nanopores, one-way mass transfer, repressurization, oil soiling, viscosity reduction, vaporizing gas drive. So these are all, there's an SPE paper on each of them, claiming that this is the mechanism that works. One important thing is that difference is that miscibility and wettability do not appear to play a role in unconventional EOR. Because as you continue to increase the pressure beyond miscibility pressure, beyond MMP, the recovery continues to increase. So in fact, the basic idea in EOR, unconventional EOR, is to do huff and puff, inject gas at the highest pressure you can, and then let it soak. And so go with full power. And that's why you need upfront investment in compression. And so at one point, this compression, if a company wanted to order something in Eagleford, they needed to wait about 12 months to get it. And I'm sure now everything is stacked up. So what is needed for future success? So from my experience in conventional EOR, what we did in 70s and 80s, and we were able to make big differences, is we need to bring some discipline to technology application for unconventional EOR. We have to develop valid physical and chemical foundation for various processes. There has to be robust integrated studies, which include lab work, simulation, and controlled field pilots on a scientific basis. And so this is, this thing is probably cannot be done by an individual company or individual university or something. So there has to be joint studies between academia, research labs, and operators to develop a framework for unconventional EOR processes. So despite EOG's success in Eagleford, the EOG claims that they have improved recovery by 30 to 70% in their wells, which for any EOR project will be a great success. And but operators are still cautious, and why they are cautious is because of uncertainty. Because of high uncertainty. So the emphasis still continues to be on drilling and completion. This is a sure and quick payout. If you have acreage to be drilled and completed, you get your payout and profit within a couple of years. If you have to go to some of the EOR process, for one thing, it's not certain, and then you have to invest upfront effort. So and unconventional resources, since we don't have long-term production data, it's considered high risk. Increasing overall recovery versus just accelerate. So some operators think we are just accelerating production. If we continue at a smaller rate for a long time, we'll probably get the same amount of oil out. And EOR success is location specific. So you have to find sweet spots within a shale play to apply it. And then there are a lot of bottlenecks: infrastructure, compression equipment, number of wells, etc. So for practical application of EOR, technical success is not enough. You need to have economics, infrastructure, logistics consideration. everything has to line up for a successful EOR project. So finally, for large scale application, so for EOR to become a routine and large scale application in all fields, it is necessary to reduce the prevalent uncertainty and put the EOR techniques on firm technical footings. And the firm technical footings are only when we identify key physical phenomena and quantify the results through field pilots. So we have to identify what physical mechanism, and then we have to prove them through field pilots. So finally, we have a long way to go for universal acceptance and routine application of EOR for unconventional resources. So with that, thank you very much. And we can take some questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Now let's take some questions. So the first question is that, do you think that in future depleted unconventional fields area can be used for oil and gas reserve or storage if we take into account the frac hit is happening almost in all the conventional wells?
Can you repeat that? I need to put my volume up a little bit.
Sure. Do you think that in future depleted unconventional fields and areas can be used for gas and oil storages? Especially we have frac hit in almost all unconventional wells.
Yeah, I think it can be used. It can be used, but again, we need to identify, the mechanism. How, when we store it, when we push push gas or CO2 or whatever in the unconventional rocks, because they are so complex. Will we be able to get it back? That will be the question.
All right.
But yeah, it can be done, but it needs a lot of work, lot of research work.
Right. The second question is one: how much variation should an operator plan on applying to their completions? Will cookie cutters fracs be viable going forward?
Cookie cutters, I think cookie cutters is okay in the beginning, but as you go to a play, like you go to Eagleford. So in Eagleford, in the beginning, the development, so you have to apply some ideas, whatever some cookie cutters, some concepts. But as you learn, as you develop the field, you find that cookie cutter really doesn't work very well. Means there is so much variation. So these shale rocks, they are very extensive. They go thousands. In some cases they go miles, hundreds of miles, blanket. And you can go anywhere and drill a well, and you will find that shale. So it's everywhere. There is large variation, in the porosity and permeability. So we want to find what's called sweet spots, and sweet spots, and then you have to target your completion to that. So whatever you do, you have to target to, and these sweet spots are not just homogeneous sweet spots. They are sweet spots because of different reasons. And also there is, in large shales, there is variation in the type of fluids that we find. So we start from light oil and we actually end up in dry gas. So the location. So cookie cutter to an extent is fine if you don't have anything, but really it has to be customized.
Thank you. Another question: what are the main practical issues for success of gas half and puff? Is trying to keep the injected gas in the reservoir for a longer time is a key to it?
No, actually, some research that has been done and some field experience that people have noticed that the soaking time, really, after you soak for some time, 2 to 4 weeks, the soaking time is actually not that critical. So I think one researcher has done some work which shows that after a certain period of time, 2 weeks, you really don't gain by improving the soaking time. Where you gain is if you increase the pressure. If you inject it with more pressure, at a higher pressure, then there is some indication that we tend to get more recovery back.
Thanks. And the next question is on the same actually line. How can we reduce the cost of huff and puff, as the cost of compression can be a serious setback?
Yeah. So what can you do is, yeah, the compression is a big expense. In some of these large compressors, they are $4 to $5 million upfront investment. So what you need to do is you need to schedule your wells and place your wells. So you have to do block drilling. So when you get this compression equipment, one should be able to utilize this compression for multiple wells at the same location. So I think Eagleford has EOG in Eagleford. That's one of the things that I think they may have done very well, is that they have they do this drilling pad. They have these pads and there are multiple wells there, and so they bring this compression equipment and then they just do it very cost-effective manner. And also since they have gas close by, there's a gas close by in that area. So there's an infrastructure that exists for them to bring the gas for injection.
Interesting. There's another question. I have seen work looking at fracking child wells with liquefied CO2 capable of transporting propellant so effectively to get an EOR effect on the parent. Can you please comment on this technology?
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. I have seen work looking at fracking child wells with liquefied CO2 capable of transporting propellant to effectively get an EOR effect on the parent. What's your take on this technology?
I would say, I have not kind of thought about that, but I would say that's a possibility. That's a good thing. Maybe a good thing, because all the condition exists to make a difference in your production. Only field pilots can tell.
All right. Another question that we have here is that, do you have any source for conventional versus unconventional when you discuss that for the conventional we need 40 to 60 well to get to be CFD, but for the unconventional we need about 1,500 wells to achieve the same? Is there any resource for that?
Yeah, this is from it's from practical experience, and also I think it's documented in some of the SPE papers. If you want, you can send us an email and I can dig it up.
Sure.
That's that comment is made as a general sense, huh? That you need many more wells in unconventional reservoir for the same amount of production that you are targeting.
Sure, that would be the last question here that we have, is asking what role play the type and the performance of the proppant used in completion phase into the EOR phase? Is it directly related, completion phase and EOR phase?
Yeah, so when we talk about EOR, the completion actually is included in that in a broad sense. So it's not EOR. I will never call it something to do with fracturing technology or technique. I will never call it EOR, but it's included in the EOR. So if you have if you are doing a novel proppant placement or novel material for proppant or something like that, that will definitely be within EOR.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tariq, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Please make sure you follow us on LinkedIn to receive updated information about upcoming P.A.S.S talks. With that, you all have a great day. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And if you have any question, you can send me an email.
Sure.
I'll be willing to answer your question. And if you want to discuss anything, you know, these days we are locked down, so plenty of time to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you so much for offering that. Thank you.